I won't let him make a stupid military decision. That's why you have all those generals and advisors. But in certain key ways, there are no safeguards for one single. What you could have hoped for individual, the opposite of extraordinary. What they sometimes history comes down to trends and forces and big stuff like that. And sometimes it comes down to one guy deciding to run away for the second straight time. We're pointing out that at the moment the king of Persia does the unforgivable again, things aren't going that badly for the Persians. I would say they're losing, but they still have a shot, just like they still had a shot at the Battle of Issus when the king turned tail and ran. Once he turns tail and run, the chances of pulling out that upset go way, way down. You hear nothing about the elephants in this battle from the sources, and while the ferocious-looking silent chariots turn out to be easily countered by the Maccabees, the Persian cavalry is living up to the hype fully. They have Alexander in a good deal of difficulty. Sources say that Alexander is right on the heels of the Persian king pursuing him, and he gets a message that his left flank Armenia is, as usual, fighting with huge numbers of people holding his own but starting to fall apart. Alexander has to stop the pursuit and come and help. The Persians have also broken through the middle of the formation in a couple of places where gaps appeared, so it is far from a steamroll on Alexander's part. He has to come back and help, and there's some tough fighting in one area, and the bottom line is that for the moment, the person who has Alexander wants has gotten away. But the bottom line is he'll never be able to raise another field army like this to contest the empire. Alexander may not have the crown for all intents and purposes. Even as the mopping up of that battle are going on, this guy is the king of Persia. Amidst some untold numbers of corpses that continue to pile up, as the fugitives from this battle are continuing to run down by pursuing cavalry for must have been days. It's a holocaust to the Persian side. Alexander will spend literally years welling the hot spots in the Persian Empire and rise up against him, even with all of the wonderful propaganda that's come down to us about Alexander being horses with pedals in front of all these kinds of things. If you've got a murderous European woman coming to your town, you'll be wise to do that too. That doesn't mean it wasn't better thought of in some cases than the Persians. A lot of the recent history suggests the Persian war was more popular than Alexander. It was a wonderful sort of karmic justice in this whole thing, if you look at it from the Persian point of view. And the Chinese did this all the time with conquerors. But when you are the great cultural power of your day, as the Persians were, they were the inheritors of this culture. And the Greeks were the rustic outsiders, the Macedonians even more so. Over time, Alexander became more and more Persianized, dressing like them, requiring his own people to act more like them, in terms of treating him more like a Persian king. For a lot of historians that consider that the last king of kings in Persia is the guy who just destroyed the Persian army at the Battle of Gaugamela. In my mind, there's an explanation to this story where original brides all the way to the eastern parts of the empire and captures the great city for several as he proceeds to burn the palace down. Either intentionally as a symbol of payback for all those wars with Xerxes and Darius from more than a century ago. There's some traditions recorded as a very drunken mistake. From sausage and sauce that Alexander's told that he should not burn down his own stuff. The organization Suddenly, the demon king was gone native. Alexander's conquest put European dynasts in charge of these ancient civilizations that had never been into the European world before, and then in some cases for centuries. Almost Gators eventually gave the Canadian dynasties back into control of their own societies. The precious letter that pre-Alexandria, it hadn't been bleached out and left. Alexander is always considered to be the end of an era, and in Western tradition is considered to be a good thing. He's spreading Hellenism, to all these parts of the planet that didn't have creating this wonderful mix that would spawn into fantastic culture. That's the way the conqueror would see it. Probably not the way we see the conquered. Archaeologist is one of a bunch of experts who pointed out that much of what Alexander gets historical credit for actually should be attributed to the empire. Old Coach historian J.M. Roberts talking about the Persian Empire founded by Cyrus the Great a couple hundred years before Alexander the Great. He says about it, right across the old world, Persia suddenly pulled peoples into a common experience. Indians, Medes, Babylonians, Lydians, Greeks, Jews, Phoenicians, Egyptians were for the first time all administered by one empire, whose eclecticism showed how far civilization had already come. The idea of distinct units of history in the Near East was over. The base of a future world civilization was in the making. What's always so strange about hearing this line that Alexander spread Hellenism is it makes it sound like he's bringing enlightenment to a bunch of primitive natives. When in fact, the better analogy here for ancient Persia is the Roman Empire. And the better analogy for Alexander is not the bringer of light, but something much more akin to Visigoth, or Attila the Hun. The empire that Alexander's destroying is the greatest the world had ever seen, and the way it's often portrayed in history and the story and the stereotypes and the motif and the home team cheering for Western civilization is that he was somehow enforcing a law of the jungle that made sense. He's the lion taking out the sick antelope from the herd. It's nature's way. It strengthens everything. Shoes and slippers. The Persian Empire at this point is like the Roman Empire at the end too. They have silk slippers for their silk slippers. But let's not forget the silk slippers last. You found out he really liked them. As we said, Alexander really went all Persian. Maybe the last Persian king of kings. Never mind that he may have killed Darius III. That never stopped a Persian being king of kings. But while he may be a king of kings, and while he may actually fit the motif that Xerxes is supposed to have fit absolute power, corrupting Alexander, absolutely. By turning his need to become the Persian facade, they will later, but initially, this is imagined Europeans these areas that have never been ruled by Europeans before. Rome says the next 75 years is going to be one of the darkest eras in terms of what life must be like for locals, people in West Asia, up until the time of the Mongol conquests. Goodness, they at least got a little help. It was part of the deal. Something about traders. Don't forget, even if it's not true, you need to believe ancient history. I'm on record. I think most of you want to have a website. And if you look at what's standing in your way, let me suggest that Squarespace might be the answer to your problems. Squarespace offers the all-in-one platform where it's fast and easy to create your own professional website, portfolio, online store, educate resale. Simple and easy, beautiful design. You can drag and drop content, responsive design. Oh yeah, and then there's the $8 a month. If you sign up for the whole year with them, you get a free domain name. At those kinds of prices, the risk to reward ratio completely tips in the favor of you should give this a try if you've ever thought about having a website. I'll tell you what I like about it too. It's a weird thing to like, perhaps is the number one thing, but if you had my personal experience, you might understand that maybe you have. I spent years going to those websites. Nothing but website templates, looking for ones I liked for my website. I would go through thousands of them. And this is the amazing thing. I'd go through thousands and never find one that I really liked. And I'd see very few that looked as professional as the stuff I was seeing out there by big companies and outlets. Squarespace has a similar attitude towards their templates that I have toward this show, which is quality over quantity. They don't have a lot of choices for your templates because they spend their time making really good ones. Go check them out and see if that's not one of the better ideas to come around in your time. Maybe counterintuitive in this era of choice, but I found that it works for me. Kind of like how it's working for Squarespace. You can start a trial with no credit card required, and when you decide to sign up for Squarespace, make sure to use the offer code HARDCORE and get 10% off your first purchase. What are you waiting for? My grandma used to say, give fate an opportunity to intervene. The website's a great way to do that. Squarespace.
Be sure to follow us on Twitter. The address is @HardcoreHistory.
Want to help the podcast? Just buy your Amazon.com products through the Amazon search window on dancarlin.com, and it won't cost you a penny more. And it helps these guys out because they are nice young fellas.
If you think the show you just heard is worth $1, Dan and Ben would love to have it. $1 a show. It's all we ask. Go to dancarlin.com for information on how to donate to the show.
It's been a long time since we've done a Blitz edition. And as a friend pointed out to me when I explained that this latest program was going to be a 6-hour-long show that we're going to classify as a I said, don't take this the wrong way, but I'm not sure you know the meaning of the word. And I laughed because he's right. He started off this idea of a Blitz show. It was going to be something to help us get more shows out. And some nice quick ones, right? In other words, in addition to these great epics that took forever, half killed us and half killed you to listen to them. We have things in between, and they grew too, because I'm obviously, I have a problem. I'm addicted to context, as one of you said. A firm believer in the past is prologue, and that there's no good natural place to start any story, right? Everything's connected. It's arbitrary when you decide to begin things. That's how I had a show I wanted to do about Cleopatra that stretched into a 6-part series on Rome, because where do you start the Cleopatra story? The reason I chose the topic that I originally chose for today's program is because I thought it artificially constrained me. It's 2 weeks long. Could you possibly do a really long show on a 2-week long event? Well, 6 hours later, here we are. And it's also a Blitz edition, which now doesn't have anything to do with the length of the show. It's turned out through evolution to be a different length of the show. It's turned out through evolution to be a different kind of show that focuses on different things. Instead of being about people or events or eras specifically, usually they focus on an idea or a question and then weave history around the question somehow. And usually the recipe has slightly less drama than the historical epics, but slightly more twists, as we call those, musings and weird Twilight Zone things that sort of come with the territory of these programs.
I saw that was the best part.
For what it's worth, this could have been a 2-parter, but we didn't want to do that to you, so you get one long one instead.
Right?
And maybe in an experimental effort here to see what works, and in addition to some feedback we got from you folks, we tried arbitrarily after the fact that it was put together this way to separate the show into sections, modes, mode 1, mode 2, in places where maybe there are natural breaks, and stopping points or what have you. We'll see based on the feedback. Finally, this is a very unusual story to tell because unlike most historical tales, which are about things that happened, this is about something that didn't happen, and almost happened, but still could happen. It's a tale being told from the middle of the story. Unfolding series of events that are still ongoing. So while you can feel that you somehow have been inspired as we're told, because this is the case we're talking about in this tale today, because it's an ongoing story, there's no guarantee that you actually do know that. In that sense, this story is not just prologue for the event I originally wanted to talk about, which was the Cuban Missile Crisis. It's prologue for future attention. Strap in for a 6-hour exhibition. We got the event near Orlando, style titled Destroying All the Worlds. 1921. It's hardcore history.
The Blitz Edition.
Anytime you hear an analysis of our species explaining strong communities, our species explaining strong communities, why we are where we are today, you'll hear someone talk about human adaptability. The fact that we can adapt to something that's time our intelligence obviously for changing circumstances has helped us overcome all sorts of problems. Walls that you might have hit along your civilizational growth to transcend all those boundaries, and here we find ourselves in the 21st century today, alive and thriving, but with several major problems in the distance that have the potential to change that fact. Adapt around. Now, given our past history, you would think that we've shown quite the aptitude in adapting. But some of these problems may require adaptation beyond which we are capable. Do you hit an adaptation wall at some point beyond which you can no longer change as a society, as a species, as humankind? There are things that we have done from time immemorial. Fill up your history books from start to finish. It would be unimaginable if we did them today. But considering our track record history-wise, the odds will never do them again. Case in point, we currently live in an era of human history that some have referred to as the Golden Peace, which began in 1945. Now, obviously, there hasn't been a whole lot of peace since 1945. There's been lots of conflicts, people get bombed all the time. Human violence is ongoing and continuous. But what that refers to is conflict between the great powers. The kinds of wars you've seen from Mesopotamia onward. The World Wars, the Napoleonic Wars, the 30 Years' War, the 100 Years' War, the Punic Wars. I mean, it goes on and on, doesn't it? Forever. One of the constants of human history, right? Up until about 70 or so years ago. Of course, it was 70 or so years ago in 1945, where humankind continuously improving their weapons technology from the Stone Age forward. Finally reached a point where they had created a weapon system that would be too destructive to be used. Mankind has always used their innovative technology to create better weapons and always use those better weapons. What it is weird. The norms of human behavior mankind simply treated would be things that we discovered at the end of the Second World War, the way we treated every other weapon we've ever created. Today, let me show you that this is a theoretical question. There is no guarantee that the long peace lasts forever. It's unimaginable to think about what a general war amongst great powers would even look like with the kind of technology we possess today. Humankind is 70 plus years into an ongoing and unending experiment. Can we handle our weapons technology? The only way this experiment ever concludes is if we find out that we can't. There's a famous quote that may or may not have been said, you never know about these things, by the great physicist Albert Einstein. He's supposed to have said something to the effect that he doesn't know with what sort of weapons the Third World War will be fought with, but the one after that will be fought with sticks and stones. One of my favorite phrases, according to ceremony during the Long Peace, which was attributed to Air Force General Curtis LeMay, he swears he never said it, was bombing someone back to the Stone Age. Is something like that even possible? And what are the odds that we get to find out? I think what I find so interesting about both those quotes, the Einstein one and the LeMay one, is that they both invoke this idea of knocking humanity back on the civilization scale a few rungs below where we are now. As we all know, human history, as I've described, is kind of like a stock market. You have your ups when civilization reaches new levels of sophistication and technological capabilities and all that, and then you have your downs. And it's sort of weird for modern people to realize that there were ever people who lived in a time where their forebears were more technologically sophisticated than they were. We've been kind of on a long stock market run since about the Renaissance or really the Middle Ages. Haven't had any downturns, within 1,000 or more years. Start getting pretty fat and happy and comfortable, and we forget that there maybe are variables out there that could do to us what giant plagues that wiped out, a quarter of the population could do back in the old days. Take, for example, what both Einstein and LeMay were referring to, nuclear war between the great powers, what we used to call World War III. Once upon a time when I was growing up, even seemed to be like a gun aimed at your head, and you walked around with this all the time, a sword of Damocles over your entire society, really the entire world. Because it didn't matter if you were a neutral country during the Cold War. If an all-out nuclear exchange happened between the United States and its allies and the Soviet Union and its allies, Switzerland wasn't escaping unscathed, right? Just because they were neutral. It became the first time in human history where you had the potential for a single human being. We really don't know how these things run, but the potential for a single human being to have the power to destroy tens of millions, maybe hundreds of millions of lives with a decision window of minutes by the giving of an order. You think of all of the really scary people in human history from a power standpoint. Your Genghis Khans, your Alexander the Great, you name it, your Hitlers, it doesn't matter. None of them had that kind of power. If Genghis Khan decided he was going to destroy your civilization, you were in for 10, 20, 30 years of war, maybe, especially if you were China. If Richard Nixon in 1969 decides to nuke China, you destroy 100 million people in an afternoon. Nobody's ever had that kind of power before. It's a unique new human experience, and you don't get many of those. Although the people that were there, the 400, 450 special human beings that witnessed the birth of the atomic/nuclear age, realized the minute they saw it that everything had changed. The successful testing of an atomic bomb was, of course, the famous Trinity bomb test from July 16th, 1945. And not only was the weapon successful, which was not a given, but it was more powerful than the physicists had expected. And many of them, if not all of them, could look into the future and see weapon that was only going to grow in power as time went on. As powerful as the test they had just witnessed was, this is scratching the surface of what this new era will provide in terms of weaponry. J. Robert Oppenheimer, sometimes called the father of the atomic bomb, described the moment went off this way in the 1965 interview in a program called The Decision to Drop the Bomb. We knew the world would not be the same. A few people laughed.
People cried. Most people were silent. I remember the line into scripture, Bhagavad Gita. Vishnu was trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty, and to impress him, takes on multi-armed form and says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." I suppose both of them, one way or another.
Now I have become death, the destroyer of worlds. All the old religious texts always have so much power to the language, don't they? In this case, it matched what Oppenheimer and his fellow scientists created and saw and witnessed. That day must have been a whole slew of mixed emotions for those people. The famous Manhattan Project was a giant endeavor to build a super weapon. And some of the greatest minds in physics and sciences related to that from all over the world were brought together. Massive amounts of resources and manpower and money devoted to the project. And all these people sitting on pins and needles during the test because nobody knew if this was going to work or not. There were a lot of reputations on the line, all sorts of giant amounts of pressure and tension. And so when the bomb went off, there was a huge sense of relief and triumph, but mixed emotions among some of the physicists. Not all of them, by the way, but people like Oppenheimer for sure. And the reason for the mixed emotions was, if you had already seen how the last year, become the last year of the Second World War, 1945, had gone, who would have thought anyone needed to create a super weapon? It was much of an improvement on the technology as it was being unleashed that year. In 1945, cities were being wiped off the map a couple of times a week. Cities. If there's one thing the Second World War proved yet again, is it doesn't matter how many arms limitation ideas you want to float. When you're not in total war, how much you have these genteel ideas about how weapons will be used and when they will and won't be employed. When you are fighting with everything you have against the other great powers in what's called total war, there is nothing in the arsenal that you are not prepared to use. People sometimes point out poison gas wasn't used in any sort of major way in the Second World War, but the reason why is because it wasn't a war-winning tool. If it had been, they'd have used it. It wasn't worth what would happen in return to you for something that amounted to essentially a minor irritant in terms of the war effort. Nuclear weapons would have been a different thing. I mean, imagine if Hitler and the Nazis had gotten hold of a nuclear bomb first. That's the thought that motivated a number of those physicists involved in the Manhattan Project denied Germany the chance to get nuclear weapons before the Allies. Some of them were less enthused once they realized, well, there's no way that they're going to beat us in this race. Because then all of a sudden, you work to create a super weapon and you put it in the hands of human beings. Therein lies both the problem and the challenge. And the physicists, when they thought to themselves about this, knew it. When they talk about how we're all going to survive a world where the weaponry is as powerful as the modern descendants of those weapons that were originally used at the end of the Second World War. The physicists talk about us needing to grow as a species, or else, as sort of was implied. And I would suggest that in most of these quotes, you can hear them looking on the bright side, putting the best face on the idea of now that we have these super weapons, what does it mean for mankind? Oppenheimer himself said, quote, "It did not take atomic weapons to make man want peace, but the atomic bomb was the turn of the screw. The atomic bomb made the prospect of future war unendurable. It has led us up those last few steps to the mountain pass. Beyond, there is a different country." End quote. In other words, we could never quite get that peace thing right until we have the right incentive. The fact that we'll all be blown to kingdom come is the right incentive. You know, hail peace. Let's put in a good face on that. Oppenheimer must not be so positive. Arthur Holly Compton, also a physicist. Quote, "It is hard to think of fissionable materials when fashioned into bombs as being a source of happiness. However, this may be. If with such destructive weapons men are to survive, they must grow rapidly in human greatness. A new level of human understanding is needed. The reward for using the atom's power toward man's welfare is great and sure. The punishment for its misuse would seem to be death and the destruction of the civilization that has been growing for 1,000 years. These are the alternatives that atomic power, as the steel of Daedalus, presents to mankind. We are forced to grow to greater manhood." Is that a nice way of saying adapt or die when it comes to altering modes of human behavior that have been a part of the story since there's been a story? Of course, not all the physicists always look at the bright side on this question. There's a famous quote by Albert Einstein that makes him sound like he's a bit of a pessimist when it comes to the question of society's ability to adapt or die. In this question, he's supposed to have said, quote, "The unleashed power of the atom has changed everything, save our modes of thinking, and thus we drift towards unparalleled catastrophe." End quote. A gun aimed at our heads, a sword of Damocles, something we were very aware of. When I was a kid, we did duck and cover drills for atomic bombs dropping, nuclear bombs, thermonuclear bombs by then. That gun is still pointing at our heads. We just don't notice it anymore because so many people have grown up in the shadow of that they're used to. If somebody's pointing a gun at your head all the time, eventually do you forget about it? If you're born with a gun pointed towards your head, do you even notice it? In a way, I kind of see the ability of people to forget that gun is aimed at them as an evolutionary success tool. Why should these people be traumatized because of something that happened 70 or so years ago? They have their own lives, their own problems, their own records to deal with. I mean, if we all have to carry the baggage of preceding generations on our backs all the time, what would we be dealing with? So in a sense, it's a healing mechanism, but is healing the same as forgetting? It seems to me one of the main things working against the idea of this long peace continuing indefinitely is we don't remember why it was so important. We never have another great power war to begin with. If the sword of Damocles has not fallen in a while, you forget how sharp it is. What a horrible mess it can leave. British philosopher Bertrand Russell once made it sound like the odds of human beings managing to avoid having to be reminded how sharp the sword of Damocles is when it comes to nuclear war seems unlikely. He wrote, quote, "You may reasonably expect a man to walk a tightrope safely for 10 minutes. It would be unreasonable to do so without accident for 200 years. End quote. If you want to be reminded of what that sword of Damocles can do, there's only two real-world examples that you can go study. I will tell you, there's a lot of scientists out there and calculations done and testing, but the only thing that really compares, if you want to see not a glimpse into the past of a singular human experience that only happened twice to a certain group of human individuals in a certain situation, but instead you want to see what a future nuclear attack will look like, you have to look at the only two that there have ever been. The atomic bombings of Hiroshima on August 6, 1945, and the one right afterwards, a few days later, at Nagasaki. These days, when the atomic bombings are discussed, it's often in the context of discussing the morality of dropping them. Was it right to use them at all? I find that the problem with these discussions, and I've talked about it at length in other programs, is this idea that the people involved at the time, the decision makers, had as much free range of options as people today assume they have when they didn't. I mean, the idea that President Truman could have done something besides drop the bomb is a little bit out of step with the political realities he was dealing with at the time. Historian Gary Wells, who wrote a whole book on the power of the atomic bomb to change everything, had this to say about what would have happened if Truman had decided not to use the bombs or to have used them in another way. The other person, by the way, mentioned in this quote is General Groves. General Groves was the military head of the Manhattan Project. In his book, Bomb Power, historian Gary Wells writes, quote, "If it became known that the United States had a knockout weapon it did not use, the families of any Americans killed after the development of the bomb would be furious. The public, the press, and Congress would turn on the president and his advisors. There would have been a cry to impeach President Truman and court-martial General Groves. The administration would be convicted of spending billions of dollars and draining massive amounts of brain power and manpower from other war projects, and all for nothing." End quote. In addition to that, and this is often overlooked, I think, by people who talk about the morality of dropping a bomb like the Hiroshima and Nagasaki weapons on civilians, and that's what the Japanese civilians were already putting up with on a daily basis. What the Germans had started in places like Rotterdam in 1940 and the Japanese had done in China before the Second World War even officially started had been developed into the aerial weapons we saw from 1943 onward. And they were devastating without the nuclear bombs at all. In March 1945, months before the atomic bombs were dropped, Tokyo was hit with a firebombing raid that killed 100,000 people and vaporized 17 square miles of the capital. And by the time the atomic bombs were dropped, 50 to 60 square miles of Tokyo gone, and it had been taken off the top priority targeting list. Some 60 plus other Japanese cities had the same fate meted out to them. It was a logical extension, a natural progression, if you will, of total war. It's a dynamic that would have been very difficult, if not impossible, to stop. It's partly the reason why when we discuss another total war today, it's so scary. Because the idea that human beings could control what's going on is an illusion. It has a momentum all its own.
She said, I can't.
Now, there are some things that were different about the atomic bombings that blow me away to this day. One is the instantaneous nature of it. It's hard enough, you would think, to get your mind around the changes that happened to your city during a massive late war bombing raid. If you have 500 or 1,000 heavy bombers flying over your city, practically wingtip to wingtip, dropping incendiary and high explosive bombs on your town, how hard is that to get your mind around? When you crawl out of the bomb shelter and see what used to be your city in ruins, how hard is that to get your mind around? But if instead of happening over a 24 to 36-hour time period, it happens in the blink of an eye, well, that's what the atomic bombs did. The best, relatively short description I've read of the effect of the two bombs was penned by author Susan Southard in her book about Nagasaki. She says that within a second of the bomb being dropped, the fireball was 750 feet in diameter, and the temperature in the fireball was 540,000 degrees Fahrenheit, higher than in the center of the sun, she writes. She says, quote, the bomb's vertical blast pressure crushed much of the Urakami Valley. Horizontal blast winds tore through the region at 2.5 times the speed of a Category 5 hurricane, pulverizing buildings, trees, plants, animals, and thousands of men, women, and children. In every direction, people were blown out of their shelters, houses, factories, schools, and hospital beds, catapulted against walls, or flattened beneath collapsed buildings. Those working in the fields, riding streetcars, and standing in line at city ration stations were blown off their feet or hit by plummeting debris and pressed to the scalding earth. An iron bridge moved 28 inches downstream. As their buildings began to implode, patients and hospital staff jumped out of the windows of Nagasaki Medical College Hospital, and mobilized high school girls leaped from the third story of Shirayama Elementary School, a half-mile from the blast. End quote. She then points out that a survivor emphasized that it all happened in an instant. Think of the shock that this engenders. And there seemed to be, two things in quick succession. Well, really three. First, if you saw it, you got the light. And if you weren't shielded from the light somehow, it burned you. It looked kind of like it's been described differently, but like a flash bulb going off of an old camera. That sort of bluish white light. Then there was the blast wave, which, could level everything depending on how far away from where you were. And then there were the fires, which seemed to break out several minutes after the actual blast, as though everything were sort of heated up, and it took a minute for, the kindling to catch a light, but then it did everywhere at once. And some of the most harrowing stories come from family members who would be trying to get another family member, who was stuck in the debris that was all of a sudden everywhere out as the flames approached, and had to leave them. Essentially saying goodbye as they watch their child stuck in the rubble as the flames approached. It's horrifying stuff, and the people who were first on the scene in both cities talk about running into human zombies, if you will. Silent people burned almost beyond recognition that were like in a trance. Hiroshima survivor Hiroshi Shibayama saw the explosion and ran toward the city center where the bomb had gone off. I said, quote, when we had gone about 1 kilometer, we were brought to a standstill by a grotesque group of people. The blood pounded in our heads again. I remember that my eyes were drawn inexorably to the scene. The people were burned so badly that it was hard to distinguish feature from feature, and all were blackened as if covered with soot. Their clothes were in rags. Many were naked. Their hands hung limply in front of them. The skin of their hands and arms dangled from their fingertips. Their faces were not the faces of the living. End quote. He then went on to point out that he'd seen quite a few normal air raids up close, but this was different. Quote, how could I comprehend what I saw before me now? It was not just a group of injured people, nor was it a procession of the dead or a band of ghosts. No sound came from these figures. They seemed to have given up. The pity that they engendered is beyond expression. They continue to stream past in deathly quiet. How can anyone describe them? Their clothes ripped from them by the force of the explosion. Their bodies burned by the intense heat. Some were completely naked, and others had only the shirts stuck to their bodies. The injuries to their faces were particularly cruel. Unscathed and with clothes intact, I felt like an intruder. End quote. The general estimates of the casualties from the Hiroshima bomb, for example, were between 70 and 80,000 dead from the fire and the explosion, more killed later by radiation, probably an equal number of people injured. The Nagasaki bomb numbers were somewhat lower due to all sorts of different reasons. Nonetheless, the tens of thousands of deaths, maybe almost 100,000 in one city, caused by a single bomb, was an exponential growth of powerful weaponry. After the first bomb was dropped on Hiroshima, U.S. President Harry Truman went on television to try to explain to the American people and the rest of the world what this new weapon was, and to essentially, officially, bring the rest of the world up to speed in an entirely new era, the atomic age.
A short time ago, an American airplane one bomb on Hiroshima and destroyed its usefulness to the enemy. That bomb has more power than 20,000 tons of TNT. The Japanese began the war from the air at Pearl Harbor. They have been repaid many fold, and the end is not yet. With this bomb, we have now added a new and revolutionary increase in destruction to supplement the growing power of our armed forces. In their present form, bombs are now in production, and even more powerful forms are in development. It is an atomic bomb. It is a harnessing of the basic power of the universe. The force from which the sun draws its power has been loosed against those who brought war to the Far East.
Historian Michael S. Sherry says that there were overlapping feelings on the part of the American public to finding out that this new reality existed. He writes, quote, "A cacophony of reactions to the bomb's advent arose swiftly among Americans. Some stressed pride in American achievement and satisfaction in gaining vengeance against the Japanese. Truman's announcement that the Japanese, quote, have been repaid many-fold, end quote, for Pearl Harbor. A minority of Americans wished the war had gone on longer, so more atomic bombs could have been used against Japan. Others, especially soldiers who assumed that an invasion of Japan was the only alternative to the bomb's use, welcomed the peace that the bomb had speeded, and the bomb itself as a tool for enforcing continued peace. Overlapping those other reactions was another, as in responding to the Holocaust, many Americans saw the bomb as evidence of the scourge of modern war, in the face of which the wisdom of American use seemed a minor matter." Now he quotes a New York Herald Tribune article from the era, which said, quote, "One forgets the effect on Japan as one senses the foundation of one's own universe trembling." End quote. Famed CBS News correspondent Edward R. Murrow put it this way at the time, quote, "Seldom, if ever, has a war ended, leaving the victors with such a sense of uncertainty and fear, with such a realization that the future is obscure and that survival is not assured." So while Americans could be glad that the bomb was in their hands, there was a clear sense and understanding that this would probably not always remain the case. Something like that, when you were used to having two oceans, that kept you safe from anybody doing anything of the sort that other countries were very familiar with during the Second World War, could set the foundations of your universe trembling. And this is where you begin to get this divide. This idea on the part of some that everything has changed, and so the human species is going to have to shed themselves of habits they've had forever. And people who view themselves anyway as much more firmly attached to reality, who think that what we have here is just a natural extension of technological change, working in the benefit of our side, the good side. President Harry Truman called the atomic bomb the greatest thing in the history of the world. The following year, after the bombs were dropped and the war was over, there would be a famous meeting where the scientist who headed up the Manhattan Project meets face to face with the president who dropped his creation twice. Oppenheimer is a perfect example of the sign that feels as though Pandora's box has been opened, and he feels increasingly responsible for picking the lock on it. It sounds like President Truman was caught off guard by Oppenheimer's guilt. There are many different quotes of this account, and they're all different. In their book To Win a Nuclear War, Michio Kaku and Daniel Axelrod tell the story this way. Oppenheimer and the President and the Secretary of State were talking. In the course of the conversation, Oppenheimer told Truman, "Mr. President, I feel I have blood on my hands." Truman then reached into his top pocket, removed a neatly folded handkerchief and offered it, saying, "Would you like to wipe them?" After Oppenheimer left, Truman turned to Dean Acheson, the Undersecretary of State, instructed him not to bring Oppenheimer around anymore, and declared, "Blood on his hands? Damn it, he hasn't half as much blood on his hands as I have. You just don't go around belly aching about it." An R-rated version of the story is told in Jean-Jacques Solomon's Science et Politique, where he said, quote, "Oppenheimer, when he went into Truman's office with Dean Acheson, said to the latter, wringing his hands, 'I have blood on my hands.' Truman later said to Acheson, 'Never bring that fucking cretin in here again. He didn't drop the bomb. I did. That kind of weeping, it makes me sick.'" Truman could dismiss Oppenheimer, but he was far from the only atomic scientist who was gravely concerned. Even before the two bombs were used on Japan in the Second World War, more than 70 atomic scientists signed a petition with a bunch of different things in it, but among other concerns were that the bombs were going to be used against cities and people, and they suggested using them offshore or in uninhabited areas. Truman, as we said, had a whole bunch of different pressures working on him that these scientists didn't have working on them. Once the war was over, all of a sudden the outlook could change, because it could afford to be changed. You're not in hot blood anymore, you're in cold blood. And now you have in your hands these new weapons. What do you do with them? How do you control them? Who's in charge of them? And what if other countries get them too? There were, in the years 1945 and 1946, a lot of tug of wars and all sorts of questions being made. And I mean, the number one for a while was, who's in charge of atomic weapons? The military? It seemed like a logical choice. Their argument was, if we're going to have to use them, we ought to be in control of them and know what we're doing. Truman is supposed to have said something to the effect of, "I'm not going to let some dandy lieutenant colonel decide he wants to start an atomic war." Eventually, that power would be wrested into the hands of the civilian authorities, and the president, particularly,
I want to thank Ben for giving me one of those.
who had the power to decide to push the button, as it will be known later. Historian Gary Wills said this is one of the effects the atomic bomb had. It changed the American constitutional system almost quietly due to the technological necessities that the weapon required. He wrote, quote, "Lodging the fate of the world in one man, with no constitutional check on his actions, caused a violent break in our whole governmental system. General Groves had a mere simulacrum of that authority, and only for a single project. Presidents now have it as part of their permanent assignment. This was in effect a quiet revolution. It was accepted under the impression that technology imposed it as a harsh necessity. In case of nuclear attack on the United States, the president would not have time to consult Congress or instruct the public. He must respond instantly, which means that he must have the whole scientific apparatus for response on constant alert, accountable only to him. If, on the other hand, a danger to our allies or our necessary assets is posed, calling for a nuclear initiative on his part, he cannot issue a warning ahead of time without alerting the enemy. Like President Truman, who was told he could not forewarn Japan, he must act with alone authority. The nature of the presidency, he writes, was irrevocably altered by this grant of a unique power. End quote. So already the nature of the weapons was changing the way we do things on a national level here in the United States. But the question of how this might change things on a human-wide level was being widely debated as well. In the years 1945 and 1946, there were some very interesting, relatively unique ideas floated in the world of public opinion and governmental proposals. There was an attempt in those years, an active attempt to try to put the nuclear genie back in the bottle, to eliminate atomic weapons from the face of the earth, and almost as if to pretend that they had never been discovered at all. Now, there are two things to understand before we get into this. The first thing is, all this is occurring when the bodies from the Second World War are still warm. And after these terrible, earth-shattering wars, you often have a hangover period afterwards where people are understandably in one of these moods where they say, never again. This can never be allowed to happen again. At the end of the Second World War, they throw the advent of atomic weapons in at the very end there. That's a definitive extra exclamation point on that never again. And so if this seems like a pie in the sky, rainbows and unicorns utopian approach to things, realize that they're living at the last time the sword of Damocles dropped, and they have a justifiable fear of it. The other thing to take into account, and I'm not a historian, so you're not going to see me picking the right approach, is that this can be a legitimate proposal that we're talking about here. This could be for public consumption, and behind the scenes realpolitik and geopolitical chess matches and business as usual can be going on. In October 1945, which is right after the Second World War ends, President Truman gives a speech to Congress, which kind of begins to deal with that question about how are we going to control these nuclear weapons now in this new atomic age. And he gives one of these speeches where he says, the hope of civilization rests on international agreements where people renunciate the use and development of atomic weapons. It's a pretty big deal, and then he begins work with the heads of Canada and the United Kingdom a month after that on formulating some sort of policy. One of my nuclear experts I was reading, Joseph Serriccioni, essentially says it's the first nuclear non-proliferation agreement ever. They send their financier representative, a guy named Bernard Baruch, to the brand new United Nations. And on June 14, 1946, he makes this proposal. He does it with this very dramatic, famous language. He says, we are here to make a choice between the quick and the dead. That is our business. If we fail, then we've damned every man to be the slave of fear. It's a great speech that is supposed to set the apocalyptic tone, though, that a world with these weapons out there, conjures up. And the discussion talks about taking all the uranium and plutonium everywhere and everything you would need to build these bombs and putting them in a central location under an international sort of a security situation where nobody could get their hands on them and you couldn't have these weapons anymore. Now, if you're one of these people that thinks in terms, maybe that the physicists were using about people growing into greatness, maybe you could see this as an example of that. These are human beings treating this with the respect and rationality that it deserves, and eschewing all of the normal power politics one would expect. 5,000 years of human history would lead you to believe. And truthfully, from a humanitarian viewpoint, the United States offering to essentially give up their monopoly on atomic weapons. I mean, when in the history books does somebody do that? With a super weapon. We've got the only one, but we'll give it up for this humanitarian cause. Now, here's the catch. Sort of the United States said they would do this as soon as everyone else had renounced them and all the materials had been put into a central location and all of the agreements to make sure no one was cheating and building these weapons on the side were in place. And then as soon as that was done, the U.S. would give up all their weapons to. Well, there was a little counter proposal made by the people that were going to begin to be the other superpower in the world for this next 40 years after this period that we have called, and the history books all label, the Cold War.
The thin bread crust, pizza delivery, it's twice as dangerous. Be a cop. Salute the real truth.
Because of the existence of atomic and later thermonuclear weapons. Our former wartime allies, but we weren't exactly buddy-buddy with them before the war, the Soviet Union. The seeds of the suspicion that will explode into rabid animosity in just a few years are already apparent in 1946. The Soviet counter-proposal to the United States, Britain, and Canada saying, let's all just renounce the use and development of these weapons, and as soon as we can prove we've all done that, the United States will throw theirs away. And the Soviet Union said, why don't you throw yours away now? Since you're the only one that has any. And then we'll figure out how to keep the world from developing any more after that. That's exactly the kind of attitude that anybody studying human history forever would expect, right? Many out there would say that's just rational. Absolutely, don't get hoodwinked. On the Soviet side, what the United States really wanted to do with this arms control agreement, if you will, is extend the length of the monopoly that they had on atomic weapons. I'm sure no one else can develop any, and then we'll have a longer period of time where we're the only ones who have them. But it began to sort of lay the groundwork for what we would see in the future. A three-dimensional geopolitical chess match. The board itself is booby-trapped with weapons, and no one knows where they are on the board. Somehow anyone conducts major movements up. The board itself is determined by where the armies were when the Second World War ended. And there are some notable trouble spots. The number one geopolitical trouble spot on this chessboard, Berlin, the former German capital. At the end of the war, Germany is divided. The eastern half is control of Soviet forces, the western half control of the United States. All four of those powers sharing jurisdiction and occupation of the former German capital in Berlin. The problem is that Berlin is geographically speaking well within the Soviet zone of control in eastern Germany. The Soviets control all access to the city. A couple of roads that the Soviets watch over carefully is where all the supplies come in from the west. It's an important piece on the chessboard, but it is a piece that from the beginning of the game is effectively held hostage. The most important piece the Soviet Union has on the chessboard is the Red Army. The Red Army is constructed differently than armies in the West were. It's an army that was meant to slug it out with German forces, with tanks, with heavy artillery. It is a hammerhead sledgehammer of an army. It is full of veterans, and their commanders are well versed in how to use the very large forces that they possess. The war ends. The other powers, like the United States and Great Britain, quickly start demobilizing their forces. The Soviets demobilize forces to a degree too, but the Red Army stays where it is, large, powerful, threatening. The Allied forces really have nothing to threaten in terms of. I can stay here and instantly ask what the Red Army will need to advance into units, commanders and shields. That it could just advance all the way to the Atlantic. To stop it was widespread. Chess pieces on the west side, though, were compensatory. They balanced out the Red Army to some degree. The West had the Green Air Forces and naval supremacy, and they also had the atomic bomb. The problem that the United States found itself in terms of a dilemma is the only thing that they had that they knew could blunt the Red Army's You march to the sea if it came to that with atomic weapons. It may have been too valuable a piece to give up. Of course, let's remember the Red Army was not sitting on the edge of Soviet territory defending the motherland. They were perched basically along the farthest extent that they had taken over in wartime and were occupying unwilling populations of people before the war in their own countries. Places like Poland, Romania, and Hungary, and the Baltic states, and a lot of other places now occupied or being incorporated slowly but surely into the communist bloc. This became a bone of contention, and something that would have kept good relations from breaking out probably in any case. The other issue that divided the two sides after the war was ideological. And that should come as no surprise in the 20th century, such an ideological century anyway. In the 1930s, you had three giant different ideological blocs competing with each other: fascism, communism, the democratic free market West. War essentially eliminated the big fascist powers, leaving a dynamic that, as historian Gwynne Dyer points out, diplomats from hundreds of years ago would have understood. They would have predicted a war between the Soviet Union and the United States based on power politics alone. I have to bear this in mind because growing up when I did, the idea of communism versus democracy was such a huge part of the equation that it's hard to rule that out or minimize that. But as Dyer points out, it's a lot like the role religion played in the wars of the 16th and 17th century. It's important and it makes a big difference, but if you took that out of the equation, you probably would have had the same competition anyway. He writes, quote, "The United States and the Soviet Union have no common border, no claims on each other's territory, no history of national animosity. They're not even serious rivals for trade or resources. But their post-war confrontation was perfectly predictable and widely predicted as soon as the probable outcome of World War II became clear around 1943. He said, quote, "Our gravest error in the late 20th century is to overestimate our distance and our difference from the past. We believe that the present round of competition between the great powers is different from all the others in history, that it is invested with special significance because of its ideological dimension and because of the appalling consequences if it were to lead to war, as all such other competitions have eventually done in the past." End quote. He then goes on the list that both sides can use to point to the other and say, well, look at all these provocative things you've done. And then he says, quote, "Each side has an ideologically watertight explanation for why the adversary behaves with such persistent wickedness and aggression. But none of the post-1945 developments would seem surprising to a 17th century Spanish or Ottoman diplomat. Neither communism," he writes, "nor liberal democracy would mean anything to him other than as a useful label for the players, but he would have no trouble understanding why the victorious alliance so quickly fell apart. They almost always do after victory, because the winners are the biggest players left on the board. Hence, they automatically become the greatest potential threats to each other's power." End quote. No, I disagree with Gwynne Dyer's excellent about power politics, but at the same time, as someone who grew up in that era also, it's hard to discount the dread and disdain in the United States for communism, the impact that that had overall on events. There's a Foreign Affairs magazine review of Stephen Whitfield's book, The Culture of the Cold War, that I thought was an interesting description that sort of spanned the width and the breadth and then sort of the weirdness as you look back on it now decades later, the entire affair. It says about the book, quote, "A lively and well-documented account of how the Cold War both produced and was sustained by super patriotism, intolerance, and suspicion, and how these pathologies infected all aspects of American life in the 1950s: entertainment, churches, schools. Older readers will remember and still be amazed. Younger ones will find this a readable introduction to a bizarre aspect of the American past. End quote. And you know, looking back on it, there was something bizarre about it, and I didn't even exist in the time when it was at its most bizarre, the 50s, the 1950s. At the same time, and I've said this before, I wish that there was this potion or serum that you could drink that would allow you for a moment to feel what the people living in that era felt about this ideology that to many of them seemed a little better than what Hitler and the Third Reich was offering, and whose desire, as they saw it, to extinguish freedom all over the world was about the most evil thing they could think of. When you are fighting the most evil thing you can think of, there's not a whole lot of things you are not willing to use to win. Case in point, atomic weapons. There's another element that's involved in the story that contributes to how bizarre it looks as we look back on it now. It's something that for a great many people was an article of faith at the time period, which we know to be false because, well, what they were worried about happening never happened. But they don't have that luxury. And every era has its conventional wisdoms that it has to use in factoring out how to make decisions. We are as trapped by our own as they were by theirs. But a great many people, and it's hard to quantify exactly how many, but it spanned the entire spectrum from world leaders and decision makers to the intellectuals, down to the farmers and ma and pa operators of hardware stores in middle America. It was this idea that war with the Soviet Union wasn't just a possibility, but that it was an eventual inevitability. And that colors your thinking in ways. If you don't believe that, or if, as we do, you know that that wasn't what was going to happen, it's insane. Because you consider things that don't make sense outside of that context. For example, if war is going to happen eventually, more than 5,000 years of human political and military history tells you it's better if it happens at a time and at a place of your own choosing, and also when your advantages are maximized and your adversaries are minimized. Since the end of the Second World War, no greater disparity in weapons technology has ever existed than when the United States had a monopoly on atomic weapons. It should be pointed out that there were those, even at the end of the Second World War, patent famously and legendarily, the American general had suggested that since, we already had our stuff all over there, everything was mobilized, everything was at the height of it, we ought to fight that war with the Russians right now. But he was a notoriously gung-ho general. But even stone-cold pacifists will be tempted by this temporary window of opportunity that exists. If the one atomic power on the planet wanted to kill the other potential one by strangling it in the cradle, and no one knew how long the window of opportunity was going to last. Expert opinions differed. President Truman is supposed to have asked J. Robert Oppenheimer how long he thought the monopoly would last. When do you think the Soviets would get the bomb? He's supposed to have replied, I don't know. To which Truman is supposed to have responded, I know, never. Truman didn't explain his thinking on that, whether or not he thought perhaps that the collective minds of mankind would come to their senses and international agreements would fix this problem. Because he believed World War III was imminent, and the Soviet Union would be wiped off the map and their problem would disappear in a giant mushroom cloud. military head of the Manhattan Project, General Groves, thought it was going to be 2 decades before the Soviets got the bomb. But concerned scientists and even pacifists were worried enough to consider the potential value of a preventative nuclear war. Bertrand Russell was jailed for opposing the First World War as a pacifist. Wrote, right after the Second World War, quote, Russia is sure to learn how to make it.
Two separate places.
I think Stalin has inherited Hitler's
That's
ambition
fucking
for world
wrong.
dictatorship.
Don't listen
One
to these
must expect a
motherfuckers.
war between USA
That
and
fucking
USSR,
doctor, that
which will
fucking
begin with
stupid
the
ass
total
bitch
destruction of London.
is purgatory
I think the war
goes
will
where
last 30 years and leave a world without civilized people, from
you
which
die
everything will have to be built afresh,
before all
process
people will
taking,
say
say, 500
people have to
years.
pray for you to get the fuck out.
There is one thing and one only which could save the
Limbo
world,
is where all
and that
the
is the thing which I
babies
should
go
not dream
who
of
haven't been
advocating. It is that
baptized.
America should make war on
Is
Russia
that
during
incorrect?
the next 2 years.
I don't fucking know. I'm
and
not Roman
establish a
Catholic,
world
but that's as I
empire
understand.
by means of the atomic bomb. This will not be done, he writes. He then gives a speech, pretty much right after that time, to the British House of Lords. I'm quoting this, by the way, from Prisoner's Dilemma by William Poundstone, a wonderful book of one of the most famous scientists associated with atomic power, John von Neumann. He quotes Russell as telling the House of Lords his nightmare scenario that would turn a pacifist into somebody that wanted a preventative nuclear war to be started. On his advice, he told the House of Lords, quote, as I go about the street and see St. Paul's, the British Museum, the Houses of Parliament, and the other monuments of our civilization, in my mind's eye, I see a nightmare vision of those buildings as heaps of rubble with corpses all around them. End quote. When Russell, who's one of the more intelligent people of the century, theorizes that the next war, which he sees as imminent, will leave people uncivilized, and that civilization will have to be rebuilt anew, and it will take 500 years to get back to where we are now. Think of how apocalyptic that is. Now, humankind obviously faces these sorts of threats periodically. In fact, we still face this one now, although we don't think about it much. But I mean, everything, for example, from global warming to some meteor hitting our planet or anything like that constitutes a grave potential threat, and the dynamics of each one is different, so our reaction is different. Climate change, for example, because it needs to be figured out via mostly things like data and observation and science, and it becomes an arguing ground for people with vested interest. These people had a different situation going on. The dynamics around atomic weapons had just been proven and seen. Basically, the attitude was, if you don't want to end up looking like Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and here are some pictures, by the way, if you didn't see it, we have to do something. Doing something, the conundrum that these people found themselves a lot more trapped by than we would find ourselves trapped if we invented atomic weapons yesterday. It is one of those vagaries of history, isn't it? That a lot of these things happen at a time period where everyone is still all traumatized and stressed. Not when you really want to hand the new powerful super weapon over to human beings. Let's let the human beings heal a little bit. I mean, if you discovered atomic bombs yesterday in a laboratory, and we were talking about it today, how different might our approach to them be? Well, these are terrorists. These could really do some damage. We better think about this. But, nobody's ready to kill each other. We're not sitting on the knife's edge of tension. When Bertrand Russell gives that speech, remember what's going on in this guy's memory banks. Remember the life experience that he's forming his decision-making with, which is the best line I think a history teacher ever gave. He says, remember what these people have seen. Their life experiences determine how they formulate the best reaction in any given situation or approach. Bertrand Russell was born in 1872 into a completely different world, and the reason it wasn't the world he was born into anymore. The two worst world wars in history destroyed it twice. The first one was so bad that they had this entire period afterwards where humankind said never again, not the first time nor the last time, and they built up whole structures and treaties and arrangements and deals and everything. The League of Nations is just one example to see that this never happened again. And instead, within 20 years, it did, and it was worse than the first one. But at the end, it ended with atomic weapons. So if you're Russell in 1945, a month or two after the war ended, you are suffering from historical post-traumatic stress disorder, and so is everyone around you. So when you wonder how atomic bombs might be used, you're thinking they're probably going to be used like the last two things I saw happen within living memory. It's going to be a lot messier than any of that. The other thing that these people have going on that I have to continually remind myself of, and it would be again so different if we developed these weapons yesterday, is that the two sides that are the tip of the spear in the Cold War, the USSR, the Soviet Union, and the United States, both entered the Second World War as a result of a devastating surprise attack. Barbarossa, the German surprise attack on the Soviet Union in 1941, and in December 1941,
Really good properly. Wow, so there's this one lady who was a seamstress who started yesterday. It was really good.
happening with atomic or nuclear weapons.
Showed you all the different things.
And then remember that these people had already seen that movie just a few years ago. The other thing that they were absolutely certain that they had learned from the Second World War and the time leading up to it had to do with appeasement, and how tough you had to be on people. And all of these elements combined to create a dynamic where everyone was on the hair trigger alert. Elements combined to create a dynamic where everyone was on the hair trigger alert, and now they had these weapons that were so dangerous on one side. And this was key. 1946. In northern Iran, the Soviet Union did not leave as quickly as they were supposed to. President Truman is supposed to have threatened to use an atomic bomb on him. He seemed pretty darn happy when they got out real fast. In other words, the idea that when you have the super weapon, you can impose your will on other people is really, really seductive. Secretary of War Edward Stimson explained the advantage that the atomic bomb gave the president and the United States and the West co-controllers. When it comes to world power, the atomic bomb was the equivalent of a royal straight flush. That is a hard geopolitical hand to avoid playing, isn't it? And what would people from earlier eras have done if they had nuclear weapons and a monopoly on them? Julius Caesar, Alexander the Great, a bunch of Chinese emperors, Japanese, the name goes on. Heck,
And all these people are like,
here's 50 atomic bombs, but don't use them. If Oppenheimer and those physicists who were talking about human beings can rise to another kind of level of evolution and destroy themselves, you can see why. Because actually imagining them in the hands of most of history's great figures in the past sound like the prelude to a nightmare.
I'm trying to document. She is
Occurs to me maybe that question could be phrased a little differently and examined also. I mean, if the physicists were talking about a new level of human understanding necessary to produce super technology, it's not fair to imagine atomic weapons in the hands of some of the most sociopathic leaders in history. How would humankind in general, the past, dealt with something like this is perhaps a fairer comparison? If you could go back in my famous time machine, a very large version of it, and bring back nuclear weapons and some technicians to set them up, show them what button to push and everything, think of people from the Bronze Age or the Iron Age, nukes their adversary. You give Hannibal nuclear weapons, explain what they do, set them up for him, hand him the button, and say, if you push this, all of Rome will be gone, and they'll be walking zombies with their skin over. Thousands dead and all that. Does he push it, or does he say maybe I should think about it? It's interesting. To wonder about the development over time of human systems, but also something based on If you want to suggest this species learning, how about the idea of imagining Hannibal with that nuclear weapon, having gotten a chance to already live through things like the First and Second World Wars, to have experienced Verdun and Stalingrad and gas and atomic bombs used in warfare, and then hand him the weapon and say, maybe now you understand the mess this sort of Damocles will leave. Do you still want to leave Rome? I'll tell you what's fascinating to me, and again, it's part of the human condition. I'm not sure we can get around it. Is at this moment, and maybe this is the kind of stuff the physicists were talking about also, at this moment when it's all on this like doomsday clock knife edge in 1947, scientists will inaugurate the doomsday clock because it's showing how close we are to destruction because of atomic weaponry and all that. Doesn't matter how close it is, though, to strike at midnight, we're still playing politics in most democracies because that's how democracies work. You go back and read the political pressure on a guy like Truman that the opposition party uses against him, and the typical political dynamics of trying to appeal to rural voters in swing states. And it's insane how it changes a dynamic that you really wish humankind could sit in a room and coldly and dispassionately, without 1 ounce of concern about the politics of it, and think about this issue that bedevils us, right? And maybe all humankind, maybe all succeeding generations, if you want to take it to the logical nth degree of hyperbole. But no, we're still going to call the president soft on communism because it's going to help us in the congressional elections in a place like New York, and we're darn close to taking the Senate back. But how else can a democracy run? I think, and I don't think this is an unusual statement to make at all, if you look at U.S. history, there are certain time periods where the country fundamentally changes. It's almost like a body part breaks and we replace it with something else that's reasonably similar if you want to fool yourself and dress it up, but has been altered irrevocably.
That's a good kind of that's the kind of social economic
founding of this country and the change from the Confederation to the Constitution is one of them, in my opinion. The Civil War and Reconstruction is another one, in everybody's opinion. But if you look at the period, and people would have different dates on this, from about 1946 to about 1952, you see the United States government transformed. Historian Carol Wills described him talking about how the presidency, the power of one person to decide to go to war, and it's changed that aspect of presidential power. But then he goes on to list things that people who know American history all know anyway. All of the famous national security decisions and things like the Marshall Plan and the Truman Doctrine and all these different things that have been taken as a whole. And when you look at them on the list, it's amazing how many happened in the space of a few years. Create the national security state. And you should know my own biases before I go farther, because I do have them in this case. Factoring that into when I talk a lot about politics, in my opinion, the United States made the wrong course change during this time period and became a different country. A country much less connected to the one American belief that they have when they study what I like to call the myths of America and the Constitution, as a layperson would understand. I think September 11th, the 9/11 attacks is another one of these periods in U.S. history. And I think you see a similar dynamic then as well. In neither case, by the way, do I hold the decision makers accountable for having made the decisions at the time. I think it was inevitable, for example, that any U.S. administration, given what's going on, freaked out and overreacted after 9/11. I think the same is true in this period between 1936 and 1952. It is the later generations afterwards that I'm upset with for not fixing it. The problem with historical memories is trends go on long enough, whole generations are born, never knowing what needs to be fixed because they never lived in the time for the change.
These are my favorite.
Today, we need to go back and fix the things that we did between 1946 and 1952 that had Carlton's overreactions. How the heck do you get back that far? And a more critical question for a person like me is, what if we like it better this way? So please note my biases at the outset. But this new national security setup that was developed from about 1946 to around 1952, it's when the CIA was created, the NSA. The entire structure of government that we know today that protects secrets and spies on the internet keeps us safe. It's our world now, and this is what happened. It seems to run counter.
I like that. That takes some fucking balls to just all those right
Scientists were saying we were going to have to do if we were going to avoid World War III. They called for a new level of understanding, whatever that is. I don't pretend to understand exactly what the physicists want to do things like this. We got the opposite with the national security state. Whereas some of these famous physicists, some of the most famous, were saying in 1945 and 1946 that we should tell the Soviets about the bomb right when we started making it, or that we should give them the nuclear secrets after the war. Think of how crazy that sounds to us today. With our modern mentality, we should just give the terrorists all the nuclear bomb secrets. That sounds insane, doesn't it? That sounded insane to a lot of the military class. After the Second World War, we executed people in U.S. history for turning over nuclear secrets, and some of our physicists were suggesting that's the sort of level of understanding that will take us to a new world where we can ease tension so we don't have World War III. That's a pretty hard evolutionary tool to have to fight against, because you have to combat your own fear.
Devices.
I think I've said it before. Fear is one of those evolutionary developments that has probably saved more lives in human history than anything else I can think of. Normally, it's a very good thing to have, right? Saber-toothed tiger comes at you back in caveman times, run. Or kill it, or whatever you have to do. Then protect yourself because you're afraid from saber-toothed tiger attacks and put up fences. The fear thing is not a bad condition. It helps with security. But if the very things that have always helped with security threaten not just your existence, but civilization, can you turn that evolutionary tool off? If that's the only way to survive. As I try to play with counterfactuals, what if scenarios in this period, imagining it turning out differently than it did, I can't think of any that sound like they would be rationally imaginable. Take, for example, the military in this situation. What are they supposed to do after the Second World War? Pretend they don't have a bomb if you're the United States? Or if you're the other side of this growing distrust that will turn into the Cold War for the Soviet Union, do you just pretend the United States doesn't have an atomic bomb? How does that work? Like you said, it's for the President of the United States almost too good of a hand to resist at least threatening to play. I mean, that's just politics, right? That's just foreign policy, the way it's always been handled. And if you look at this from a strictly, age-old power politics viewpoint, historian Michael Howard does a great job of just setting up the way the military saw this thing. To them, and we're speaking of them as a whole rather than some of the individuals, and even perhaps some of the various services, we'll run that in a minute, saw these things because that's what they're paid to do. Howard wrote, when confrontation developed between the Soviet Union and the West shortly after the ending of the Second World War, the military on both sides foresaw business as usual. The Soviets planned to advance their western places to the Atlantic, to deny to the Americans the use of air bases in Western Europe, while the Americans hoped at least to retain bases in the British Isles, Spain, and the Middle East, from which to bombard the Soviet Union, and then in due course, in quotes here, liberate Europe for a second time. He continues. The peoples of Europe knew nothing of these plans and would have shown little enthusiasm for them if they had. Next time, remarked a French prime minister who did know about them to his American colleagues, you will be liberating a corpse. End quote.
This is a one-way
The problem you face in 1946-1947. If you're the United States military or Harry Truman, and maybe you've already threatened to play that Royal Straight flush on the Soviets in northern Iran once, The problem you have very few of these bombs, although no one knows that, and you have no good way to deliver them. The next couple of years, the military and Harry Truman and the government of the United States will focus on a system to deliver Armageddon. That's what's needed. Its official name was the Strategic Air Command. It was part of this brand new branch of the United States military known as the Air Force, which used to be a part of the Army. And it was part of an entire reorganization that was also a part of this post-Second World War transformative period that changed U.S. foreign policy, the whole design of government, the new Department of Defense, the new Pentagon. It was all part of this. The Strategic Air Command's job, if called upon to do it, was to destroy the Soviet Union's major cities with atomic weapons, and in the process, kill tens of millions of people. The mind sort of reeled. Well, to us today, it looks like rainbows and unicorns place. Trying to craft legislation to rid the world of the scourge of atomic weaponry. Till a year and a half, 2 years later, when the president has to deal with the approval of Air Force plans for winning World War III that involve, as the key part of the strategy, something commonly referred to as the atomic blitzkrieg or atomic blitz. Trying to explain all the various things that go into why these decisions were made is complicated. And one of the main reasons why is how recent all this is. As we said before, reality is complicated. I don't have to tell you that. Social, cultural, economic, individual forces. 1,000 things working on us in every direction all the time. That's pretty much how it's always been. But you can't always see it in the sources. So when you look back to like ancient Egypt and you look at historians write about that, they don't have access to all the information that will flesh out the reality of those people who really feel it now. Consequently, history seems much more simple because the minor strands that are all interwoven around events are not visible back then. But the closer you get to now, the more visible those minor threads become, and it's impossible to quantify the importance of this thread over that thread. For example, as I said earlier, you would love to think in a situation as important potentially as global nuclear war, that we would have philosopher kings sitting in quiet rooms discussing with the most intelligent physicists and ethical people in the world how we deal with this situation. But instead, the normal things that impact humankind are at work here too, despite the stakes. We said politics and democracy a little while ago. But it's more than just politics. How about such banal concerns as budgetary questions and inter-service rivalry? To name just two. For example, I think you can make a pretty good argument, a lot of people have, that the number one reason that you have an atomic blitz-style strategy as the plan to win World War III should come during this time period has more to do with budgetary restraints than anything else. Again, we wish you had your philosopher kings and everything in the back room, not worried about anything banal like politics and budgets and what have you, but reality intervenes, which is why this whole argument about having to change humanity in order to survive in a post-atomic world is so difficult. As Einstein said, the atom changed everything but our modes of thinking. But it's hard to change your modes of thinking. Think about Harry Truman after the war. Harry Truman's got to cut the budget because it's spending a fortune, because it was just in the biggest war in history and it was doing the lion's share of funding. Can't stay at those levels, right? Can't live at those levels. So Harry Truman has to cut the military by what he figures is going to be 70% after the war, while still having to be able to fight World War III should it come. And as we said, a lot of people thought it was imminent. How do you do that? Truman brought in business people, opened up their business books from college that just said, listen, it's all about prioritization and consolidation. There's no reason for all this redundancy. First of all, you should just combine all these services and have no Air Force, no Navy, no Army, just one whole military defense structure. You hear this argument all the time in this country, you hear it in other countries too. The services hate that because they all have a lot of pride in their own service and sometimes a little bit of activity toward the other ones. What's more, you had a whole new branch of the service out there, the U.S. Air Force, that had just been created, and all of them competing for an economic pie that was going to be cut by 70%. As you might imagine, in any country, in any time period ever, the knives came out, and the backbiting started, and the services had to get up there and essentially argue for why they were relevant and why they mattered and why they should get a larger piece of the economic defense pie. And it was the Air Force that ended up winning the argument. They went to the president and they basically said, if I can simplify this, there's only one branch of the service that will win World War III for you, and it's us. Because we're the ones who will send fleets of bombers over to the Soviet Union and bomb them with atomic bombs. Boom. This was a very contentious period in U.S. defense history. Again, it's part of that entire era when the big change occurred between 46 and 52. But the services, in some of these cases, were fighting for their very existence. The second defense secretary, a guy named Lewis A. Johnson, who was totally on board with this, let's get rid of a bunch of branches of the service idea, is supposed to have said this, quote, there is no reason for having a Navy and Marine Corps. General Bradley tells me that amphibious operations are a thing of the past. We'll never have any more amphibious operations. That does away with the Marine Corps, and the Air Force can do anything the Navy can do, so that does away with the Navy. End quote. He then goes on to cancel this giant supercarrier the Navy was building, and as you might imagine, things just go ballistic. It leads to something that's considered to be one of the more unusual and serious, because there hasn't been a lot of them, revolts by a branch of the service in American history. It's often referred to as a mutiny in some spheres. It would be a very strange mutiny, because usually the mutiny is from the lower levels of the Navy to the higher levels. This involved the highest levels of the Navy, who came to the defense of the service by arguing for all sorts of things that you would understand. They're just trying to make themselves relevant, and of course the Navy can do this and no one else can. The unusual argument that they also brought to the table, and they brought it out in congressional hearings in a way that, when you think about it, is just shocking, was they questioned the U.S. strategy of atomic bombs on moral grounds. In something known as the Revolt of the Admirals, in congressional testimony, a bunch of war heroes from the Second World War, guys like Chester Nimitz and everything, came out, and in arguing essentially that we don't like your plan to just go drop atomic bombs on cities, and that's how you're going to win the Third World War, but at the same time, you're going to defeat right to the service. They decried the entire idea as un-American anymore. As Eric Schlosser writes in Command and Control, quote, at congressional hearings in October 1949, one high-ranking admiral after another condemned the atomic blitz, arguing that the bombing of Soviet cities would be not only futile, but immoral. They advocated precision tactical bombing of Soviet troops and supply lines, using planes from American aircraft carriers. Admiral William F. Halsey compared the Air Force's new bomber to the siege weapons once used to destroy medieval castles and towns. Quote, I don't believe in mass killings of non-combatants. End quote. Admiral Arthur W. Radford testified, quote, a war of annihilation might bring a Pyrrhic military victory, but it would be politically and economically senseless. End quote. The harshest criticism of the Air Force came from Rear Admiral Ralph A. Austin, who had toured the burned-out cities of Japan after the war. He described the atomic blitz as, quote, random mass slaughter of men, women, and children, end quote. The whole idea, he said, was ruthless and barbaric and contrary to American values. Quote, we must ensure that our military techniques do not strip us of self-respect, end quote. Once again, hard to quantify and really know How much of the Navy's opposition to use of atomic bombs as the war-winning thing you base your strategy on was because their service didn't have any? And how much of it was based on
I want
moral
to
grounds? Planes would be notably muted, and submarines could carry nuclear weapons, as should be noted later on. But the admirals bring up a key moral question that people wrestle with for decades. As a matter of fact, they still wrestle with it. Is there an ethical way to fight an atomic or nuclear war? Is there a way to bomb cities and civilians with atomic weapons and have it still square with American values and the values of the freedom-loving West, as it would have been known back then, in general? They're fighting a bad guy. As I said, that you go read the literature of the time, it is clear. This might as well be the Third Reich again, and Joseph Stalin might as well be Hitler. Now, little known fact here in the United States, but the Soviet Union will mellow out a bit after Stalin goes away. But this is the hardcore era still. He is considered to be a ruthless guy, and communism appears to be on the move. But if you kill tens of millions of civilians using atomic bombs in order to thwart the evils of a totalitarian superpower, how much evil do you get splashed on you in the process? And what if you strike first? That's the second thing that came into play. Even pacifist Bertrand Russell for a little while was thinking that the United States should strike first to keep the bomb out of the hands of guys like Joseph Stalin. Interesting to think about what our history books would look like today and how we treat the subject of a preventative nuclear war, and the United States acted on that kind of premise back in the day when Bertrand Russell was making those speeches.
Kind of dog you.
By the way, in all fairness to Bertrand Russell, he changes Nonetheless, I can't imagine the history books treating it all that nicely today to try to explain away all those deaths to keep the Soviet Union from getting an atomic weapon. One is reminded of Friedrich Nietzsche's line about be careful when fighting monsters, that you yourself do not become a monster. It's a tough ethical dilemma, isn't it? And from my own standpoint, I find this very fascinating because if you think about the ethical dilemma being a handgun that's loaded into the hands of a 5-year-old boy, that's kind of what I feel like this period is here. Maybe the most dangerous period in atomic history because it's the one where we're still trying to figure out if Oppenheimer's right and we have to grow into a new higher version of ourselves to survive. This is the period of like adolescence. Can we do it before we shoot something? It's a period where the tension is mounting at such a pace. I think Michael Sherry, the historian, says that the drumbeat of crisis and initiatives was relentless during this time period. You can look at a timeline and it's one thing after another. Bam, 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 bam. And remember, those are the things that make it into the history books. That totally discounts what the people in that era reading their morning newspaper on a day-to-day basis would have had to contend with. Rumors and lies and threats and maneuvers and things that might happen but never turned out to be true. They sweat that out on a daily basis. So if you're talking about these things that sound horrific to us today that anyone would even consider, you don't understand the threat those people thought they were facing. The fact that we know that their worst nightmares won't come true can't be allowed to blind us. The position that they found themselves in, they had the luxury of knowing how things turn out. Changes everything.
It's like that kid in a spelling bee, script spelling bee. Negative.
It instantly allows you to go, oh my God, I'm so scared that the communists are going to take over the world. When I was growing up in the 1970s, there was something known as the dominant of communism. It's this idea that it spreads from one country to another, and then as soon as one falls, it subverts the next one over there. And it was supposed to explain this exponential growth of communism in the world and why you needed to be concerned about all these little countries. You'd say, well, who cares about this little out-of-the-way place if they go communist? It's not exactly like they're in the center of the world. Why do they matter? You say, oh, you don't understand. It's the domino effect. They will subvert the country next door, and then you can't really get a foothold. In the 70s, when I was growing up, you didn't think that was crazy, although there was still a lot of rebellions. But the reason it looks so out of whack is because in the 1970s, when I was a kid, things had stabilized. That was a theory developed by people that were watching reality unfold back in the era we're talking about now, where it did look like dominoes were falling, and it looked like they were falling quickly. There were a couple of different kinds, covert and overt, for example. At the beginning of 1948, the Czechoslovakian government is overthrown in a coup and become part of the communist bloc. One of their famous ministers found at the bottom of a multi-story apartment dead, apparent suicide out of his window, which many people believe was nothing but Russian agents tossed him over the side. But that began to give everything sort of a very spy, underhanded, clandestine, the enemy within sort of feel. Communism was different than fighting Nazism. You didn't have to worry about Nazism as an intellectual contagion very much. Whereas communism was something that could appeal to downtrodden peoples everywhere, including in your own countries. So all of a sudden you had a new enemy to deal with. Potentially some of your own people to change things too, as everyone knows. A couple of red scares and nothing else. McCarthy and some legitimate problems with people who were spying because they had intellectual affinity for the beliefs of the Soviet Union. I get letters from communists all the time saying you always portray communism as such a terrible light. All we can go on is the examples we have. If they don't match the potential of the classroom theories, well, you can't help that. I can only tell you what the Joseph Stalin regime was like. And it wasn't pretty. And if you want to point out the problems that the West has, I'm going to agree with you on all of them. But there's still no comparison. In this case, the Soviets just were ruthless, and the United States and others argued that they had to meet that kind of ruthlessness with a similar sense of resolve. And some of this resolve required the ability to push back in places. A couple months into 1948, Joseph Stalin does something that tests the resolve of the West, if you will, in a way that is so challenging, it's like calling your bluff in that high-stakes poker game. Gio Kaku and Daniel Axelrod in their book, How to Win a Nuclear War, say that by this time period, Harry Truman has already threatened the Soviets 4 times with a nuclear bomb. Maybe bluffs, but never came to a head because the Soviets gave in. On June 24, 1948, a pretty darn good geopolitical chess player himself, Joseph Stalin, makes a move that basically calls the entire nuclear bluff of the West and shuts down all the rail lines and the land routes that were supplying West Berlin, a place occupied by the French, the British, and the Americans. They shared with the Soviets, and that was deeply inside the rest of Soviet Eastern Germany at the time. Only allowed to exist because Stalin allowed food and everything to go through. On June 24, 1948, he stopped allowing that. And basically moved to the United States and the rest of the world. And in his own geopolitical way, said, check. Now you may be thinking to yourself that we are overplaying the poker and chess analogies a little bit. Because there are things, by the way, that can always be applied to diplomacy and foreign affairs, realpolitik, and all that. You can always compare those things to chess matches. But nothing so fits the model as the Cold War. And in fact, in due time, an alternative approach to Oppenheimer and the physicist's idea that we're going to have to grow as a species or we're going to wipe each other out will begin to be developed along the lines of things that we call today game theory. And we're already underway in the minds of people like John von Neumann and others, developing ways to see if we can use our intelligence to not drastically lose the game. If humans had to adapt or die to their new weapons technology, it was the only kind of adaptation that was going to work. An evolutionary one. Or if that was impossible, did humankind have a backup plan for living with this sort of technology? In this case, let's Stalin had said foreign policy sort of terms is, are you really going to start World War III over this? All I did was you would no longer have access to a city deeply behind the border in our territory where the least we were in charge of defending our zone, our sphere of influence. We haven't attacked anybody. You'd be attacking us first. What will world opinion say? You're going to start World War III over this? And if you do, not only will the war start, but we'll start with wiping. Once again, it's hard to get into the minds of these people, but everything you read talks about how much both sides in this Cold War thought that they learned from World War II and the lead up to that. The whole idea of appeasement is ever present in the discussions, right? Hitler proves the point for every maniacal, aggressive dictator everywhere, right? They're all like Hitler, so everything that would have applied to Hitler applies to everything else. And in the sense of a Joseph Stalin, you cannot show weakness, so do you start World War III over as well? The wheels were in motion. And very soon, a solution on the ground, apparently by a local commander who started to have food flown into Berlin, because apparently Stalin wasn't going to shoot down airplanes. I guess they found pretty quickly. And very quickly, Harry Truman saw that as the life preserver thrown to him. Right? What are your choices? Start nuclear war or let Stalin get away with it? Well, what about we don't start nuclear war either? We just start supplying the city. Now, what are you going to do? Your move. See how this game thing works so well in this situation? I'm not going to start nuclear war first. And what will be known as the Berlin airlift, by the time it's finished, it'll be ongoing for more than a year. The United States and the other Western allies will fly in 1.5 million tons of coal, fuel, and other necessary products for everyone in West Berlin, with nearly 200,000 flights into the city. It's an amazing achievement, and was an easy out with World War III. But worth noting that during the crisis, especially in July 1948, discussions and real discussions were had amongst the United States, the president and his advisors, about whether or not you start nuclear war. It's fascinating to go back and look at. You can see this big divide between those who think that nuclear weapons are this special class of weapon that you must treat totally differently than any weapon that's ever been invented ever, and those who think it's just a bigger bomb. For the purposes of our story here, which is more about humanity adapting to its weapons capabilities, the 1948-1949 Berlin airlift crisis is key because it's the first time that you get the rubber meets the road practical questions that hadn't really arisen to this point. It's almost like you have to have the crisis before people will actually sit down in a room together and debate questions that should have come up a long time ago, like, what can we really accomplish with these weapons? What can you do with them? Now, everyone understood the threat because they'd already done this before. By the way, it's a strategy known as escalation dominance, and you don't need atomic or nuclear weapons for that strategy. It's always been used, actually. It just works very well with atomic weaponry. But it's basically the idea that you're willing to take it to the next level. You really want to fight over this? We'll nuke you. And if the other side doesn't have nuclear weapons, well, that's the end of that game, right? The problem is that that's a bluff game. And what these people are asking now, having played the bluff game 3 or 4 times already since the Second World War, is what if we're forced to play this hand? What does that mean? And then getting to the really practical realities, things like, do we have the planes in place? How many bombs do we have? What are we going to target? And if we target those places and destroy them, does that get us what we want? These are the kind of things that have been sort of compartmentalized and talked about in various branches of government. The Berlin airlift crisis brings all these people together with the president to have really fundamental discussions of the sort that hadn't happened before. You can see these broad differences of opinion. The military men, by and large, are under the impression that when we go to World War III, we're just going to use the new weapons too, the way we use the old ones. And some of the other people, for example, the head of the Atomic Energy Commission, David Lilienthal, he's part of the group of people that are counseling Truman in this key moment during the Berlin airlift crisis not to use the nuclear weapons. The July 1948 meeting between Truman and his various advisors is talked about in the GOK government. That's a Rothschild, right? In his journal that day, Lilienthal, the Atomic Energy Commission head, wrote that Truman, quote, greeted us rather solemnly. He looked worn and grim, none of the joviality that he sometimes exhibits. I rather think it was one of the most important meetings I've ever attended. End quote. The others continued. At the meeting, some, like Lilienthal, expressed reservations about using nuclear weapons. Secretary Royal, however, spoke for the hardliners when he said, quote, we've been spending 98% of all the money for atomic energy for weapons. Now, if we aren't going to use them, that doesn't make any sense. End quote. But even those who are trying to figure out maybe that you can just use these weapons as a bluff have a problem themselves. They want to deter with these things, and something strategy-wise that become known as deterrence. Their problem is that for that to work, the other side needs to think that you would use the weapons. So you can't publicly come out there and say these are the most awful things in the world. We would never use these weapons, because then you can't threaten to use them anymore. And then they have no utility if you're one of these people who believes that you won't really use them. You won't play the hand, but you'll threaten with them. But in order for the threat to work, people have to believe you will go there. Walter was reading pointed out, where he said, if the bomb's too terrible to use under any circumstances, it has no deterrent value. So even if you're one of those people that would never foresee the use of atomic weapons, you can't say that, because then they're no good at all. This becomes the main conundrum of using the bomb. But during this period, there's one main part of the conundrum that we understand today that's missing. Because if World War III breaks out in response to some event connected to the Berlin airlift in 1948, only one side is going to have atomic weaponry used on them. If you're the American public and you're sweating out these increasing tensions, you can at least comfort yourself in the idea that in the era of atomic war in 1948, you are still safe from being nuked, because your government is the only one that has the weapons. In 1949, that will change, and that will change everything. Part 2, the destroyer of worlds. 1949 is a terrible year in terms of the Cold War. The only thing that keeps it from being, say, the most terrible year in all world history in terms of danger are technological limitations. You give 1949 the same technology we had in 1969, and I think it is the worst year ever, most dangerous. A lot of things happen in 49 that make people very edgy. I mean, for example, after a long-running civil war with an intermission during the Second World War, the Chinese communists finally gained victory in their civil war with the nationalists. The nationalists go over to Taiwan, the communists declare a communist country, and all of a sudden, Soviet Russia, the largest land power in the world in terms of actual geographic size, has added to it a country roughly the size of the United States geographically, and with the largest population in the world. Communism just took in 25% of the world's population and added it to its ranks. That's how a country like the United States or the UK would have seen the situation. It's a zero-sum game, and all of a sudden communism just took China, and we lost it. We had a big political debate in the United States for a long time. Which party in the White House lost to China, as though China was ours to lose. 1949, NATO is formed in an attempt to begin to cobble together a European defense strategy from a whole bunch of countries still trying to recover from the damage of the Second World War. Remember, only one country came out of the Second World War, major ones anyway, any better off than they went into it. That was the United States. Everybody else was recovering. Certain countries like the Soviet Union from really grievous wounds. That's part of the reason why the estimates maybe on how long it would take the Soviets to get their own atomic bomb were so off. How did they do it so quickly? The military head of the Manhattan Project, General Groves, didn't think that the Soviets would get it for 20 years. Sooner than he thought they'd get it. Now, there's no doubt that espionage played a key role in helping. It doesn't change the fact that the Soviets about the same amount of time it took the United States. The Canadians in the Manhattan Project did their bomb. On August 29, 1949, in the Central Asian deserts, the first Soviet airborne test goes off. The United States finds out from a monitoring plane that was just sort of keeping track of radioactivity. Joseph Stalin, not the kind of guy to come out and announce anything about anything. The USA, though, thought he was going to, so after debating whether or not they should tell the people of the world that the Soviets were an atomic power now, one of Truman's advisors specifically mentioning the panic after the War of the Worlds broadcast by Orson Welles, saying that the whole thing might cause a panic. But in an attempt to sort of get ahead of the Soviets and they were going to announce it and to put the proper spin on it, Truman came forward and basically said, Soviets have it, and this is why it's so important to control these kinds of weapons. Thus, power rests in the hands of the single country. Somewhat amazingly, with its monopoly, one country didn't use that weapon to dominate the world, so maybe one could suggest that in an ethical sense, it shows progress. That's where Truman also slide about how long you expect a man to walk across that tightrope and say, hold on, we haven't had to do this for very long. First round goes to man's ethical and evolutionary growth because we avoided bombing the Soviet Union when only one country had the bombs, but now two countries have the bomb. Because that could have changed the dynamic. Well, it takes the fear level and exponentially confounds it because now all of a sudden the United States has to worry about having the same thing happen to places like Belgium and Germany that they worry about forever. This isn't going to get invaded in the old-fashioned sense, but what's the difference? If eventually some other power can just ignore the fact you have a couple of oceans protecting you and turn your cities into smoking heaps of rubble. The United States hadn't faced anything comparable to this since the British burned the Capitol building in the War of 1812. Psychologically, it would affect any power. The United States, though, with this extra sense of invulnerability it's always had, was in a unique place in its history. Now, the other side becoming a nuclear power does a couple of things. First of all, it closes the circle in terms of creating the dynamic that we have lived with ever since. This dynamic of both sides being able to do incredible amounts of damage to each other, at least theoretically. Very different dynamic than one side being able to do that. The other thing that happens in the geopolitical sense is the era of the United States having that MasterCard, as the Secretary of Defense had said, the oil straight flush. That's over with. Window of opportunities, another advisor had said this period when the U.S. was the only big power, that's over with too. And predictably, the questions of how to respond ran the gamut, with even sober humanitarian type scientists trying to figure out if all of a sudden the balance of rational thought had swung towards the idea of, well, now that they are a nuclear power, we should nuke them while we can. Pittsburgh prisoners to live author William Poundstone quotes Harry Truman's science advisor, a guy named William Goldman, penned a letter where he tried to imagine how a man from Mars might think the geopolitical situation. In other words, somebody didn't have any human skin in the game, just from a purely dispassionate outside observer. He wrote about the Soviets having the bomb now the way that the U.S. and the rest of the West responds. This brings up the matter of immediate use or threat of use of our weapons. Let us not build this ourselves. To bring about a true international control agreement with Russia, we would have to use them. The consequences would be dreadful indeed, even though I assume that the Russians have so few A-bombs now that they could do little or no damage to the USA, even if they could put them on target. In theory, we should issue an ultimatum. and use the bombs against Russia now, for from here on, we inevitably lose ground. And this is true no matter at how much greater a rate we produce, no matter how much more potent weapons. For once Russia is in a position to put A-bombs on our cities, no matter how inefficient those bombs may be, and how few in number, she is in a position to do us unspeakable injury. That we can retaliate 100-fold, or wipe out every Russian, will not repair the damage. So a good, though immoral case can be made by the disinterested man from Mars for our shooting him once. End quote. He then goes on to say, however, we won't do it, of course, no matter what the alternative, because the public would never support it. The last comment is fascinating again, because you're again tempted to see it as some sort of an ethical evolutionary change. The ancient Bronze Age civilizations have hesitated a minute. They don't know. Of course, we wanted to look at it in a more cynical way. Just say, no one wants to be living on what will turn into a nuclear battlefield if such a war breaks out. So when the country talks about starting one, being the first to introduce such a weapon, there's just a survival instinct that kicks in, making people from the Bronze Age who understood that perfectly. We come to another climax now. Forming the road decision. Doing things the way we always have for all the right reasons. It doesn't matter when you're like to know sort of defy our expectations. And so what do you do now? What do you do if the United States just had its atomic monopoly destroyed? The state doesn't nature and all of human history can say you try to go get another monopoly. You continue work, right? You develop the next system. You regain dominance and superiority in that field. Nobody wants to be the one who's the last person to machine gun or something like that. You lose a war that way. Last nation to get an air force, right? That's what you're already struggling to try to figure out how to handle, not having catastrophe striking the world of atomic weapons. How sort of against the grain that Einstein or not.
Hey, I'm gonna tell you what. That's fine. This guy's a dick, but he's not like crazy. Really. I totally understand. He's not like turn around, blah 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 blah. It's like if you want to, I guess, take your video or whatever, and that's cool.
The atomic bombs of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Nothing. Weapons that require a bomb like the bomb used in Hiroshima and Nagasaki as a primer for its main explosion. The guy named Edward Teller is most famous for association will be the weapon that makes atomic bombs obsolete.
You should just say, be proud of yourself. You're the chief.
But the kind of bomb that a guy like J. Robert Oppenheimer would say is farther than we should go. We should no longer develop more powerful weapons than the ones we have. But think about how much that runs against the grain of human behavior. Could we, if faced with extinction, decide to cap weapons research and development? We will never discover anything more powerful or deadly than this. How do you shut off information like that? How do you keep someone else from developing it? These are the age-old problems that humanity's always had to deal with. And right after the Soviets demonstrate that they too are now in atomic power, Truman has to wrestle
Everyone hates you and you suck.
of forces and uncertainties, and he's in a brand new era of human history with no roadmap. This is a guy, by the way, who had been vice president for like 5 minutes when Franklin Roosevelt died, and who had cried saying he wasn't up to the job. He dropped 2 nuclear weapons
You
on
suck. Your meta project is a huge fucking disaster. I'm gonna have to fucking clean it up and get all the pieces on.
one can only
Oh yeah, remember when a couple people were on?
whether you think he did a good job or
No.
not. Have some sympathy for the haberdasher from Missouri, which is what this guy was, the artillery captain from the First World
But everyone
War.
hates you, really.
Truman
On a
is
scale
not
of
one
1
of
to
the
10,
great
with
minds of
10
history,
being
one of the
like
Marcus Aurelius
burned you
He's
in
just
a pit,
pretty normal human being
and
put in a situation
0
where he literally
being
is making decisions about whether or not we can build stuff to
like
destroy
you.
the world with.
Everyone hates you. Whatever the numbers are on that scale, everyone hates you.
Soviets.
Your own wife hates you. Priscilla Chan thinks you're a cunt now.
Truman asks for some help and some advisors. He gets the wise men together. It's not exactly philosopher kings, but it is the physicists who invented the first weapon.
They look like they're jerking each other off.
Truman's that was too much of a help to Robert Oppenheimer. Obviously, nonetheless, puts him in a room in October 1949. Says, should we develop the next level of weaponry above atomic weapons? And is it possible? And if we didn't need help, do we need a Manhattan program for the next super weapon? And when the next current super weapon obsolete? Talk about this initiative. Don't build close weapons.
You're gonna go pound some fucking soda?
I blocked your attack. Sir, now you know what you did, right?
Hey, Roger. Remember when I would tell you about your pet?
Look at these cool. It's not like a boomerang, but it's only, he doesn't come back to me, he just sticks on lazy bones.
Really? Yeah.
Alright, take something like this one. You're gonna.
Why did they call you Wild Cherry Pepsi?
I go back to throwing school, so I got some plate.
Like, you're gonna help me on this one?
Until you take your card back.
He'd be like, well,
Sorry, would you like to take your card back?
Essentially, now 5 years after he's involved, was dropping a chance to see how he's dealing with it.
How about this?
They decided maybe
Come on back here.
between the lines here that we haven't involved.
did you and your friends ever talk about wrestling when you were in college?
Mankind is far better off not to have a demonstration of the feasibility of such a weapon until the president
Why? You gonna take your card back this time? You learned your lesson? No, why not?
they're coming for it too.
Why does it suck?
You seem like you'd be a good dramatic actor. You're very,
College is about
I'm not suggesting that.
social justice, and
To provide an example.
wrestling is about perpetuating stereotypes, and so they're opposite, so they don't
In determining
They don't
not to proceed to
Really?
develop the super
at all.
of providing by
Uh,
example
I
some
shouldn't say that.
limitations on the totality of war, and thus
When it comes to like
limiting the fear
transgenderism,
and arousing
I
the
don't know
hopes
about
of
transgender
mankind.
wrestler. I'm sure they're I don't want to look her up. Well, we should, because that's a good
There's
thing.
that poet Oppenheimer and his range of books coming out again.
That'd be
People around Truman
a
might say
transgender
the great Enrico Fermi and another
wrestler.
physicist.